Well, let's chat more about the implications of that vote on the economy. Emira Woods, Associate Fellow at the Institute for Policy Studies, joins me in studio. Welcome back to the show.
It's a pleasure to be with you, always.
So as we know, Paul Biya there seeking a 7th term in office. Meanwhile, you have sectarian tensions ongoing. You have this divisiveness between Anglophone and Francophone regions. How has he been handling these issues?
Not well, quite disastrously, to be honest, right? So what you have seen is the president, the longest serving, 36 years in office. Can you imagine? 36 years in office, trying to hold on to power at all costs. And what has happened is really kind of a brutal kind of unleashing of the government security infrastructure against particularly people in the region that has been, quite frankly, the breadbasket, the Anglophone region, that has seen very little development, that has been neglected since the days really of colonialism. And so what you have is incredible discontent in a region that's vital for the country, and yet, you know, the president has responded with heavy-handed measures, calling out security forces that have killed, brutalized civilians, including women and children, brutally killed, some of which has now been videotaped on video released by BBC and other outlets. So what you see is really a pattern of kind of systematic violence to hold on to power in a country where, you know, you have oil, you have such vital resources for the global economy, and yet people quite literally on the regions, in those regions where the resources lie, are left with very little to see in terms of benefits for themselves.
So let's take a look back at these last 36 years. Talk about some of the key markers in terms of not just economic progress, but also the economic challenges Cameroon has faced.
Well, the challenges are many. Like many African countries, Cameroon has a burgeoning young population, young people that are pushing forward, particularly on technology. And so what you had is a government, instead of embracing that, actually clamping down, shutting down the internet throughout, particularly the Anglophone regions. And so, you know, creating a legal and kind of regulatory roadblock for people to just communicate. So I think it is those senses of real desperation that the government has kind of used to entrench itself that has curbed what could be creativity that is actually at the forefront of many kind of innovative advances there in the country, both in Anglophone and Francophone regions of the country. But unfortunately, the climate has not been conducive to that type of work.
And you mentioned these innovative advances. What sort of economic fallout have we seen as a result of some of this divisiveness?
Well, you see already, you know, 2017 saw a decline in even the vital oil exports declined in 2017. You also saw agricultural exports decline, and even mining, the mining sector. So you still have, you know, tremendous exports going to places like China and India, and of course the European Union. That has continued unabated, but there has been, you know, some slight declines that we've seen, particularly because of the violence in the recent months, and particularly over this period going towards the elections.
And obviously, it's hard to attract investment when you have so much instability. Obviously, we have to talk about Boko Haram. How is that insurgency also affecting the economy there?
Well, it's quite dramatic when you see actually the push in this now global, so-called global war on terror, particularly, you know, the U.S. playing a very heavy-handed role in sending, you know, weapons that then can be used against women and children, as we have seen over these preceding months. So I think that the concern is that this overarching thrust towards curbing terrorism is actually fueling greater instability in places like Cameroon, and creating really fodder for extremists to kind of stake out sort of a different path, right? And so I think you have people who are ordinary Cameroonians who are not interested in advancing any global war on terror. What they want to do is freely choose their leaders and hold those leaders accountable. What they want is to kind of send their children to school, you know. Those basics, I think, is what you hear Cameroonians clamoring for, both in Francophone and in Anglophone areas. And if you have a president who's been there for 36 years, it's almost as if he has deaf ears. And so, you know, so I think the concern is that because of the prevalence of oil, there is military interest, and that is overshadowing the very real needs for people to kind of have a democratic democratic process, for people to have opportunities for jobs and for job creation throughout the country.
Now, on the one hand, you have this long-serving African leader, and on the other hand, you have a continent, the youngest continent on the planet. How do you see Cameroon affecting the region? Especially, it's landlocked. A lot of people rely on it in terms of ports and things. Where does the future of Cameroon lie?
I think the future of Cameroon lies in Cameroonians' hands. It will be those young people, and you have seen them organize. You have seen them, in spite of the closures of the internet, organizing. You have also seen women coming together, trying to encourage the opposition parties to coalesce. It has been Cameroonian women at the leadership saying, we demand peace. You know, when these outrageous videos surfaced, it was Cameroonian women calling for an end to the violence. And so I think it will be, you know, women and young people taking the lead. I think you also have trade unions that have been active and will continue to play a role, particularly in those vital sectors of the economy. But let's remember, Cameroon is linked to Chad. The Chad-Cameroonian pipeline is the largest, one of the largest infrastructure projects on the continent. So all eyes will continue to be on this very vital, very rich region that has not only produced oil, but other key mining and other resources for the global economy.
I'm sure it's going to be a very long 2 weeks as the vote counting continues. Thank you, as always, for your insights.
Pleasure.
Emira Woods there, Associate Fellow at the Institute for Policy Studies.